All right, board fam, you know the deal. It is Critical Drinker. It's the Mandalorian and Grogu. We know what we're in store for. Let's do it.
If apathy were a movie, then that movie would be Mango and Grok. Sorry, The Mandalorian and Grogu. 2 hours and 12 minutes of pure, distilled nothingness. Honestly, it's almost impressive how intellectual...
I've watched a few of these now. If you guys saw on Saturday, I watched the Jester Bell video on this. The idea of it being slop and nothing seems to be the going narrative with the movie. Like, this is the route that they have chosen to take, that all of these channels have chosen to take, is that it's just nothing happens, it's pointless. Matter of fact, the title of this video is Mandalorian and Grogu, this movie is utterly pointless. They seem to think that a movie where the story is contained within that film, even if it's in a franchise, if that story is contained within that film, then it makes the film pointless. That everything that happens in the film, no matter what the story is, if it doesn't tie into the greater narrative, that makes it pointless. That's the only thing I can discern from these videos when they call it like nothing and pointless, is that it is a story, it's a little adventure with these characters that doesn't really move the needle a ton in terms of their own personal stories, like from the TV show. But as a standalone movie, they go from point A to point B to point C. There's 3 acts in the movie and they move along there. Because the movie itself is just a movie about the story in the movie and that's it, that it's pointless. I'm curious if he feels the same way. Again, this is like the 3rd or 4th video from these guys that I've watched where I've heard that nothing happens. It's pointless. Like it's always the same stuff. I wonder if he's going to articulate a different reasoning for that.
Emotionally and creatively inert this film manages to be. It does nothing, tries nothing, and accomplishes absolutely nothing. I've had more engaging interactions with accounting spreadsheets than I had with Mongo and Gary here. It's a movie that has no good reason for even being a movie.
Okay, first and foremost, this is that's not criticism. Like saying nobody asked for it or it doesn't need to be a movie or whatever, that's not criticism. It's lazy gatekeeping. It's a thought-terminating cliche. Like, if somebody tells you out the gate, this movie or this TV show doesn't need to exist, or nobody asked for it, or it's unnecessary, where do we go in the criticism of that piece of art once that's the established narrative? As I say with the Critical Drinker, this is your guy. This is the dude that you're always like, go listen to him. He's the one out of all of the outrage channels that actually has something to say. He literally is not saying anything here. He's like, the movie doesn't need to exist. So what's the point of even finishing the video? What's even the point of listening to what he has to say? There's nothing. It's lazy criticism. It's actually gatekeeping. It's not even real criticism. It's gatekeeping.
Story that's nothing more than an episode of the TV show stretched out into a feature film.
And so you admit there is a story. You admit there is a story when just a minute ago you said it was nothing and then nothing happens. It's a story. If you admit that it's an episode of the show stretched out over a couple of hours, I would disagree with that. But at the very least with that, you're admitting that there is a story. So all the stuff you said before this doesn't mean anything when you're like, oh, this thing doesn't need to exist because nothing happened. However, the story is just an episode stretched over 2 hours. This is the same shit we got from Jester Bell. It's the same shit I'm hearing from Nerdrotic. It's the same shit from all of these guys.
Padded out with shameless filler, montages that go on forever, pointless conversations and sterile chase sequences.
What is the pointless conversation? You say that. I would love an example. Give an example of what a pointless conversation is in this movie. I'm up for hearing it. Tell me what it is. You're claiming the movie doesn't need to exist and that nothing happens. This review is 6 minutes. How are we going to have any meaningful conversation about the quality of the movie in a 6-minute video? I'm not asking for an hour, but 6 minutes, that's all you can bother to put together? You couldn't even make it to 8? That's crazy.
Performances that contain all the passion and energy of a fucking quartering video, and apathetic direction that could have been done by AI for all I know. Anyway, I'm putting off.
But wait. You guys love AI though. You love AI. Now AI is slop. So now AI is an insult. Where was this energy on social media when almost everyone in your space is like, AI's the shit. It's going to kill Hollywood. Now it's an insult. It's conveniently an insult about this movie. I can't even, it's really hard for me as someone outside of this bubble to understand how the people that watch these channels stay in lockstep with whatever the narrative is. Because it changes so frequently. There's no consistency. Holy shit.
Talking about the plot, because really, there's not a whole lot to say. The movie opens with Mundungus and Gravy hunting down former Imperial commanders for the New Republic when Sigourney Weaver shows up to collect her paycheck. Give them a new mission to locate a mysterious warlord named Janu Coin. The only people who seem to know where to find him are the Hutt twins, and they'll only give that information up if Mando can recover their relative Rota, who's been kidnapped.
So this is really interesting. I'm pausing it here because just like with Jesterbell, for a movie where they say there is no story and that nothing happens, they're spending a lot of time explaining what is going on in the movie because quite a lot does happen, even though it's a very simple formula. You got bounty hunter, you have person paying bounty hunter to go do a job. The job doesn't go the right way, and so the job changes, and then weird stuff happens at the end, and then they end up winning. It's a very simple story that we've seen done many times. If you want to criticize the movie for not treading any new water, if you want to criticize the movie for not bringing anything new to the space, it's fair. I don't agree that it has to. I don't think movies have to do that, but at least it's somewhat of a criticism. But these guys have already said that nothing happens and there is no story in the movie. So then when they start to explain what the story is, and they take, I'm going to jump back a second, they take a bit of time to explain it because there is a story. I just don't understand how you can watch these videos and go, yeah, they have a point. They got a point. They're going to spend 2 or 3 minutes explaining it, but nothing happens.
Mysterious warlord named Janu Coin. The only people who seem to know where to find him are the Hutt twins, and they'll only give that information up if Mando can recover their relative Rota, who's been kidnapped by a rival crime lord and forced to fight in his gladiator pits. Like, why not just torture the information out of them, or hand them over to the New Republic for interrogation, or...
Right, because that's worked so well in the past when it comes to the Hutts. We've never seen the Hutts as crime lords that they haven't been able to really stop. We've never seen that in the world of Star Wars. Why not just grab them and kidnap them and torture them? Keep in mind the era that this movie takes place in, the time period of this movie. Sure, we'll just grab the Hutts. We didn't even think of that. Just torture it out of them. Brand new idea in Star Wars. But this movie is responsible for doing that, even though we have seen in previous Star Wars TV shows, movies, blah, 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 that you can't just do that to the Hutts. But this movie, why not? Why not?
Or threaten to seize all of their assets, or
why not
bomb their palace into dust.
Right.
Don't know.
Right. The reason why they didn't do that is because they were trying to get information. So carpet bombing their palace would prevent them from getting the information they're trying to get from the Hutts. But I know that's probably too cerebral for you to understand.
Oh. Anyway, it's your basic Mandalorian fetch quest. Rescue Rota and give him back to the Hutts so that you can find Coin and arrest him. But then, wouldn't you know it, it turns out Rota doesn't even want to be rescued because he likes fighting in the pits.
Man, there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie where nothing happened and that it's utterly pointless and there's no story. Holy shit, there's a lot. There's a lot going on. Let's continue.
He doesn't want to follow in his father's footsteps, and he plans to make a new life for himself when he's completed his last fight and earned his freedom. Wait, what? Since when do kidnappings operate on a contract basis? Ah, fuck it, man, whatever.
I mean, they lay it out for you. They explain it in the movie. He explains the situation in the movie. There's a whole scene where he talks about what, you know what, let's just continue.
Mufasa and George go to Rota's kidnapper and offer to buy him back, but he's like, nah, it'll be fine, because he's planning to have Rota killed in his final fight anyway.
That doesn't make sense.
Wait, what the fuck? Why in the name of Carl Urban's beard would you tell this guy, who clearly has a vested interest in breaking Rota out, that you're planning to kill him? You know he's just...
Because he had intended to capture the Mandalorian anyway. He made that very clear. Think about this. When the Mandalorian goes to speak to him about Rota, he tries to get the Mandalorian to work for him, and the Mandalorian doesn't want to do that. So he knows that if he tells him that Rota will be killed, that the Mandalorian will attempt to break Rota out. And when he goes to do that, it makes it really easy for him to capture the Mandalorian, opposed to doing it in another way where the Mandalorian would have a much bigger advantage. The capture is nice, clean, and easy, as we saw in the movie. So he told him on purpose to set him up in a way where he could capture him. It's literally in the film. It's right there in front of your face.
Gonna go straight to Rota and tell him all this shit, right? But because...
Right. Hold on. We're gonna jump back there. He goes back to him to tell him. He knows, the guy knows he's gonna do this, right? The guy he's looking for. He knows that the Mandalorian is gonna go back and tell Rota, and that's why he is prepared to go in and take him. That's what happens in the movie. So let's hear him say it again, knowing that now, when the Mandalorian goes to Rota, he gets captured by them to fight in the pit. Listen to how he says this.
Would you tell this guy, who clearly has a vested interest in breaking Rota out, that you're planning to kill him? You know he's just gonna go straight to Rota and tell him all this shit, right?
Right, which is why he did it on purpose. That's why people were waiting there.
Because Rota is completely and utterly retarded, he decides to just go through with the fight anyway, which...
Arsler, I gotta call it out. These guys are idiots. Arsler. He goes through with it anyway because he believes... let's think about this for a second. Is he going to believe the guy that he's been fighting for, who has told him for years he's going to let him out if he wins this fight, right? Or a random bounty hunter that has been sent to capture him for his family? Which one of those people is he most likely going to believe in the moment? I mean, it would be inconsistent for him to just immediately believe the Mandalorian. That would be inconsistent logically.
Leaves Mingo with no choice but to fight alongside him to break him out. Oh yeah, and it turns out that the crime lord who kidnapped him in the first place is the same fucking guy that Mando's been sent here to find.
Right.
Are you serious?
Wow, that's convenient, isn't it?
Everybody said this, but nobody seems to have figured it out. That's the part I don't understand. If you think this is an issue in the story for them to make something conveniently happen, then that would mean there's an issue in leading up to it in the story. That there's a problem with it because it seems so obvious. But I've yet to hear anybody reviewing this movie say, I figured this out 30 minutes before it happened, that this was the guy. So therefore it means that it didn't work. The misdirect didn't work. But it did, because you didn't know it was him. The only reason you feel like it's super convenient is because it happens to be someone that was connected to Rota, which, by the way, sort of tracks, considering that the Hutts were the ones that were going to provide this information to Sigourney Weaver and the Resistance. So obviously they would know who that person is, and they understood the situation, even when they asked the Mandalorian to go do it. You're acting like all of these independent things that are happening are done so in a bubble, and that none of it connects together in a way that works. But once you realize that the Hutts were liars, and they were playing everybody, and Rota was being tricked by the guy that had captured him, once you realize all of that is connected into the same fucking space, it starts to make sense. But these guys can't even watch a movie where the story is very simple, very basic. They can't watch it and understand this makes sense because of what the movie tells me. They can't even figure that out.
Anyway, with Rota free to go and Coin in custody, the movie ends around the 60-minute mark. That was quick. But wait, There's more. So Muffler and Grog are chilling out back at their base when another bounty hunter shows up and kidnaps him, taking him back to the Hutt twins to be executed for reneging on their deal, leaving the little green guy with no choice but to recruit Babu.
By the way, I want to point out the irony in him talking about there's no story and nothing happens in this movie, but also pretending to be upset that the movie goes on longer than an hour because there's more story. For him to complain about, because the story, in his opinion, is either simple or some of it doesn't make sense, whatever it might be. But earlier he was saying that nothing happens and there's no story in the movie. But I guess there is. I guess you're just lying again, just like so many people in your space.
And stage a rescue mission. I'm not kidding, man. He even has a gearing up sequence with little plastic retarded hands.
Another R-slur, which, by the way, the thing is, Grogu doing all of that was meant to be cute because a lot of kids were in this movie. When I went and saw it, I've seen it twice now. When I went and saw it the first day, it was middle of the afternoon. It was mostly family with kids, and they absolutely loved the Grogu stuff. Disney knew what they were doing. These guys are mad because Disney wants to appeal to a younger demographic, a family demographic again. That's what they're trying to do. And these guys don't want that. They want heads cut off, blood everywhere, or at least they say they do. But then you have something like Andor, they completely ignore it and never talk about it again. So Star Wars, the Lucasfilm and Disney are like, hey, you guys don't want to support something that's more mature, so we're going to go and try to make stuff for a younger generation as well. They can't stand it. They don't like it at all.
So Gruyere busts Mephisto out, but he gets hurt along the way, so the Green Goblin has to nurse him back to health. Then they both stage an attack on the palace by literally crashing their ship right into it, which somehow doesn't kill them both instantly. Then there's a fight sequence.
That's just bad faith criticism. Like, stuff like this happens in Star Wars all the time where people crash and they don't die and stuff, but apparently in this movie it's an issue.
And they all leap to safety just as Sigourney Weaver shows up with some X-Wings to blow the place to smithereens. And that's it. That's the plot for Mayonnaise and Gammon.
Which, by the way, that was a lot in a movie for where nothing happened, right? That was a lot. I feel like that was a lot.
Jesus H. Christ, 7 years it's been since the last Star Wars movie hit theaters, and this shit is what you decide to roll out with? A completely dull, predictable, unimaginative, by-the-numbers episode of a TV show that people stopped caring about years ago, stretched out into a 2-hour movie where the world and characters don't advance in any way, and nothing of any consequence happens?
It's really interesting. These smaller stories, when you have movies where the stories are personal or they're smaller, they're not like world-destroying things or universe-destroying things, that doesn't mean that nothing happens or that there's no stakes. It's quite literally personal stakes between our characters, which is why we have the whole scene with Grogu trying to save Mandalorian, because there's personal stakes there. They're trying to let you know that there is an attachment between these characters, and it's more than just a bunch of action stuff going on, there's lots of action in the movie too, obviously. But movies don't have to be universe-wide films where the state of everyone's lives are on whatever happens with these two characters. Like, quite literally, I don't want that to be every movie. I like little side adventure movies where our characters get to go off and do something that's kind of important to them, maybe to a few people, but not necessarily the end of the universe for everybody else. I like that. These guys would probably argue, and I have to go and look because I think I've heard them say it before. I don't know if this is true, so this might be, you could dismiss this if you disagree. But I think they've talked about the fact that they hate the predictable, like, big Marvel movies and stuff where the fate of the universe is all on these characters. So you can't ask for something different than that, and then when they give it to you, you go, well, nothing happened and there was nothing important in this movie. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see how that criticism adds up when you're complaining that this movie didn't do anything major.
This is a film that feels terrified of the franchise it's part of, a project that lacks any kind of scope, scale, or ambition. There's no attempt to tie this thing into wider events.
That's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. That criticism is quite literally pointless. It's tied into its own show. So it's already connected to this. It's also got characters from other things. There's animated shows that connect to this. There's little bits of lore here and there. It's literally connected to its own story from the TV show. Quite literally. And that connects it to other things too. But outside of that, This movie doesn't have to connect to the Skywalkers. It doesn't have to connect to Rey or any of those other characters. It's unnecessary because those things don't connect to this show. So why is it on the shoulders of this movie, these characters, to give concessions and attention to other projects, but other projects don't have to give attention to them? That quite literally doesn't make any sense.
Up any kind of overarching story or conflict, build up the world, or even hint at what might be going on in the rest of the galaxy. It's just baffling.
Why does it have to do that? Look, I love to debunk the shit out of these guys. I don't understand that criticism. Why does an individual movie within a universe with possibly unlimited stories, why does every project have to connect to something else? Isn't this essentially what these guys want? Movies that are just movies by themselves that don't require homework. They don't require you to connect the dots from X, Y, Z. Like, it doesn't require you to do anything. You just go and you sit and you watch the one movie and you get a story within that one movie and you can walk out and go, that was a great movie and I don't have to think about anything else. I could just focus on this movie. Why is this movie being attacked for not connecting to everything else? I'm genuinely baffled by that criticism. That's quite literally an illiterate way to view movies. How they connect to other things. And especially a movie that doesn't try to. It's not like it failed at doing that. It just quite literally didn't try to. It's already connected to a bunch of other stuff from the TV shows. I don't understand.
It's like this movie exists in its own little bubble, completely removed from the rest of the Star Wars universe.
And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with a little story outside of everything else? What's the issue with that? You guys complain when they nostalgia bait and they do stuff like that on the TV shows, but when a movie comes out, it's like, hey, we're not going to necessarily do that here. Then they get chastised for that too. There is literally no metric or standard or it's a goal that cannot be obtained by these movies and projects. It's like they shift. Whatever it is their criticism is, they shift it so that it ties into whatever they're trying to paint a narrative on. So like if this movie had nostalgia baited, which I would argue that there is nostalgia in it. There are characters and stuff in here that come from other things. But if you even take that out and say that it didn't do like a cameo fest, if it did that, if it was nothing but cameo stuff and it had Luke in it and it had all these other characters in there, they would complain about that. So that's not a good faith criticism. It's literally him just changing the goalpost to whatever he needs it to be to talk shit about the movie.
I mean, I guess I'll give it the tiniest bit of credit. It doesn't rely on key jangling or member berries, at least. There's no CGI Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia. No.
What? So what do you want? Do you want the connection to other stuff or not? That is a contradiction in your logic of your own criticism. How does it connect to the greater Star Wars universe if it doesn't use characters that are recognizable to you? Because again, there's stuff in this movie that do connect to some of the more recent Star Wars things, especially the animated stuff. But Critical Drinker doesn't know anything about that because he's not a real fucking diehard Star Wars fan. And you don't have to be to criticize it. You don't have to be, but to sit here and go, well, it doesn't tie in anything else in the greater Star Wars universe. Literally, Rhoda, some of the other characters in the fucking movie, little comments that are mentioned here and there, like it does that. He just doesn't know because either he didn't really watch it and pay attention, which a lot of times, I don't know if he watches this stuff or not. I feel like he's got somebody writing a script for him. But either he didn't watch it or didn't pay attention, or he's just doing this because he knows that it feeds the outrage machine, which is even more pathetic.
Millennium Falcon or random visits to Tatooine. Shit, man, even Ahsoka, Boba Fett, and Bo-Katan don't even show up. And normally I'd praise a movie for having the balls to leave behind the nostalgia and stand on its own merits. The problem is, Mega Man and Galactus doesn't have any. It's so...
So again, so the goalpost was, oh, they didn't do any greater connections to the Star Wars universe. And then it changed to, well, at least they didn't do any cameo fest, even with characters from their own show, to I can't give it any credit at all because it was just a bad movie. So what was the point of those three steps? What was the point in the criticism of those three things if you just already don't like the fucking movie. Then those three things that you're talking about don't matter if you're just going to judge the movie as shit. None of that matters. Holy fuck.
Terrified of doing anything controversial that it does nothing at all. It's the very definition of safe, corporatized slop content. The kind of thing you might have...
there's the word slop. Slop content, right. So you have no real actual criticism of it. You tried here, and you could have. You tried, but it all comes back to just being slop. So woke doesn't matter anymore. It's not woke. Keep in mind, no girl bosses, no wokeness, no identity politics. None of the things that they would normally grift on are present in this movie or in this review. So what they have to do is they have to go, you know what? We can't actually use any of our regular greatest hits. So we have to go to the easiest one we can do, which is we'll just call it slop. And then we'll come up with a million reasons why it's bad and not give it any credit for any of the stuff it did really well. Like a lot of the practical effects they've been asking for, no nostalgia baiting. They've been asking for that. No girl boss characters. Well, they try to say Sigourney Weaver's a girl boss, but I've only heard a couple people say that. But no actual girl boss characters throughout the entire film. You've got characters just existing in their own separate story. There's all kinds of things here they've been asking for, but because they have to get the narrative going, they have to get the outrage going and feed the outrage machine, they have to call it slop. It's never been more obvious than it has been in 2026 that this is all just a media grift from these guys. That's all this is.
Playing in the background while you doom scroll on your phone. If it was a meal, it would be a bowl of lukewarm tap water. Even the acting and direction is flatter than Daisy Ridley's chest. Pedro Pascal.
I know that's bait, so I'm just going to acknowledge how fucking disgusting that was and move on. I'm just going to acknowledge it. That was really fucking gross.
Sounds completely bored and checked out. He's only on screen for a couple of minutes and he puts in zero fucking effort when he is.
So Pedro, the person that you guys are tired of, isn't on screen very much, and that's a problem now. Same dumb criticism from Jester Bell.
Sigourney Weaver clearly does not give a fuck about any of this nonsense and phones in the
same criticism here. She's just doing it for a paycheck. Although everybody working in film does it for the paycheck. But let's just go ahead and claim Sigourney Weaver's doing that with no real fucking no evidence behind it.
Performance she's given in basically everything else she's done for the past 10 years. It all adds up.
So it's not specifically this movie. It's just Sigourney Weaver in general, but we're going to hold it against this film. Great.
To a movie made out of obligation rather than desire, a film that nobody really wanted to make, telling a story nobody was interested in, put out by a studio that's completely lost faith in itself and run out of creative ideas. Right. If this was supposed to be Star Wars' triumphant return to the big screen, it is nothing but a damp squib that'll be forgotten in a matter of weeks.
I want to check now. I saw that because the box office for this last week was the studio wanted to get between 80 and 100 million on the opening weekend. That was the number they were looking for. The more conservative numbers were like 60 to 75, I think, and then upwards of 90. But the studio wanted 80 to 100. So I want to look and see where it's at. I don't personally give a fuck about box offices, but I feel like that's everybody else cares. So let's take a look and see what the box office was. Oh, well, interesting here. 102 domestic and 165 worldwide. So it actually did better than they wanted. Because again, 100 was the top end for what I saw when I was looking through my my notes here. Matter of fact, I have a card for this. Let's look at the card and see what the card said last week. All right, so yeah, this is the card we looked at last week. So this is about a week ago, I guess, when all this information came out. So the opening weekend plus budget, the 3-day domestic forecast is going to be between 85 and 95. So 3-day, which means until Sunday, which is when I'm recording this, which means they made more than what they actually had projected for 3 days. And for 4 days, it's between 100 and 115, and they're already over 100, which means they'll definitely get to the 115. The production budget estimated is 165, and it seems like combined worldwide now, they've made back their production budget. So if you look at all of this, it seems like the movie is doing exactly what they wanted it to do. Whether you give a fuck about the budget or not, this is where they wanted the movie to be. Now, where it's going to be 2 weeks from now, I don't know. You know, if we're doing bro math, bro economics, bro analytics, the movie probably has to make around 300 to be in the clear. You know, if we're talking about production budget and advertising for the movie, which by the way, I don't think they spend a ton on advertising for this film based on what I saw. So I'd say like 300 is a good number, right? And I don't know what the projections are now. I'll look again before the Nerdcast on Tuesday, but it does seem like 300 is insights for this movie. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. It could fizzle out, I feel like, but the movie might have legs. It might do really well. I know Devil Wears Prada 2 is doing incredible. It cracked 600 million, which is, again, a very woke fucking movie, doing really well. Anyway, that aside, Critical Drinker does the same regurgitated talking points to a lot of these guys, and it's really annoying. It's really frustrating because I would love to hear some real criticism about the movie, because I do think there is some. I think there is. I've talked about a little bit about it myself on my videos as well as the streams. And we're going to watch more people talk about this movie on the Codecast later tonight. If you're watching this on Monday, we're going to be live later tonight, or I'll be live later tonight, reacting to some videos. Maybe we'll react to a couple of these as well, only because I don't think I've looked at the Nerdrotic stuff with you guys. So we'll do that. But yeah, it's just, this is the same thing. Call it slop if you can't call it woke. Complain about a bunch of stuff that we've been asking for a while, because if they do what we ask them to do, we're still going to scream and yell about it and kick like little kids or whatever. And that's what's happening here. You have Star Wars giving them what they've been asking for in terms of a movie, ticking all of their boxes, and it's still not enough. And I said this last year. I was like, it doesn't matter if Disney and Star Wars does exactly what they want them to do. That doesn't matter to them, because all they're going to do is just move the goalpost or change the narrative and cherry pick something else, which is what we're seeing right now from these guys. So it's just fucking pathetic. These guys are all pathetic. Absolute media grifters, and it's never been more obvious than it is right now with The Mandalorian and Grogu.